The first half of my life was all about achievement, but that didn't create happiness.
Where we were grinding 80 hours a week building our startups and taking care of young children at home, trying to stay in shape.
The second half of my life was more difficult because that's about fulfillment, and that's an art.
I used to love having a lot of employees. It really made me feel good.
Here's the reality. In year one, ChatGPT's already reached the level of Einstein's intelligence. That's year one. This thing's a baby. Like, what's going to happen year two?
I'm not that excited for my next chapter to necessarily employ a lot of people. I think I want to have a lot of impact.
One of the definitions of fulfillment is when you are alone, how do you feel about yourself?
Welcome to the Best Half Podcast, the show dedicated to the idea that the second half of your life can be 10x better than your first. Which begs the question, what does 10x better even mean? Is it 10x wealthier? Is it 10x better health? It might make sense to go and double click on that if we're going to be all about better. What do you think about that, Rob?
I think it's a really good idea. It's a great idea. Let's talk about what 10x really means to us in the second half.
I got my thoughts on it. What do you?
Yeah.
So my spiel already. It's your turn.
Let me get started. So the first half of my life was all about achievement. So, and when you think about achievements, I'm thinking about like those days, we're building our companies. It was a science. So ever since I was about 18 years old, I was studying Tony Robbins, went to all seminars. And, there's a science to success. There's a formula. And I loved it. Like I like business formulas, and I, learned the mastery of sales and marketing. Like it's a skill you can learn.
It's awesome. I'm jealous that you had that experience.
But don't you think like business success, it's not that hard. I mean, if you get the right coaches, the right mentors, you put your 10,000 hours, like for me, it wasn't that difficult because I did the hard work. The second half of my life was more difficult because that's about fulfillment, and that's an art. So for me, the first half of my life was about achievement, getting all the stuff, all the things that look like success. But then I had a very, dramatic moment in my life when my ex-wife tells me that she's going to leave. And I was traveling about 200 days a year prior to that, clients in, 15 countries, 5 continents. And we've got 3 little kids, 2 of them still in diapers. And she's like, I'm moving out.
Wow.
So it was like, okay, so life at that moment, changed. So all of the decades of focusing on achievement, it didn't really work because we had all the things like the mansions and the summer homes and the vacation home, like all the stuff, you couldn't get more stuff, but that didn't create happiness for her or for me. So when that moment happened, that's when my life changed. And I was forced into okay, what happens now? I had to walk away from that very successful business where I'm doing all kinds of cool stuff. And I had significance because when you're going around the world and speaking at things and you've got billionaires as clients, you feel significant. To all of a sudden, the last decade, every day I'd take the kids to school, pick them up. I do all the normal stuff like a lot of moms would do. So it completely radically changed my life. But what has happened in the second half is I reached fulfillment. So for the first time,
you've actually achieved fulfillment?
100%.
Wow.
For the first time in my life, I am extremely happy to be alone. And I think for me, one of the definitions of fulfillment is when you are alone, how do you feel about yourself? And for many, 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 many years, I didn't like being alone. I just didn't like the feeling of it. But right now, and one of the challenges I have right now, we talk about dating is I'm so happy right now by myself. I have a really hard time to go, do I really want to go spend time with that person? So the 10X for me, it's about, and there's a lot of YouTube videos and Instagram videos teaching you about success and we don't need to teach any new techniques on that. There's enough videos out there. But what I don't see is a lot of people talking about fulfillment. And I think the 10X for your second half of your life, it's about how to be happy. in every part of your life. And in the same respect, you can be healthier than you've ever been. I'm healthier than I've ever been. I can put on my first year university jacket, which I'm super proud that I can still wear it. And I was able to give it to my daughter, which went to university. So I think that we can be in the best health. I think as contrarian thinkers, we're always told aging and get disease. I think it's bullshit. Yeah. I think it's just, you can't listen to what government tells you, what our friends and family tell you. You've got to do the opposite. So anyways, that's what 10X means to me.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I mean, and I've seen there are not a lot of examples, but there are some examples of people that are, well into their 70s and they look amazing. They're surrounded by love, surrounded by loved ones, friends and family and whatnot. They're still going on dates, whether they're married, they're still going on dates with their wife or otherwise if they're not. I think it is very, very much possible. So I think that's inspiring. I think you're a little further on a journey than me on fulfillment. I think you've had some years to
a decade,
of challenges, where you've had to go through that, which I'm going through now. So for me, when I started thinking about what 10X better meant, at first I go to emotions. So I think it first means that we have a lot more positive emotions, right. Which is not just happiness. I mean, happiness is one part, and I think you can have a lot more than happiness. You can have elation, you can have joy, you can have, euphoria, even pride comes to mind. Something that's right. Really, where it says that you say you're happy being alone, happier being alone. That suggests that you are proud of yourself.
Right.
You're happy with the person that you've become.
Right.
So I think that's something that I think that if it's 10X better, I have a lot more of those emotions, maybe 10 times more, of those emotions than what I went through in the first half of my life where we were grinding.
Right.
We were working hard. I mean, 80 hours a week building our startups.
Yeah.
And taking care of young children at home, and, trying to stay in shape and whatnot. So yeah, I mean, more time spent on fulfillment certainly helps. Hitting goals that we set for ourselves, right? So these are, I think, more internal locus of control. The fact that other people approve of me, I think matters less. I think what matters more is that we set objectives for ourselves and we achieve them. Or we do the very best that we can, to achieve them. And so I think if we're doing more of that, that feels 10X better to me. So Roman, I know that you're a fan of Tony Robbins.
I'm a huge fan.
It's awesome. And, I wish that I had encountered him earlier in my career. I actually saw an old Tony Robbins book that was just buried in a bookcase and unfortunately never read it. I'm not even sure how it got there, but I wish I did. And you were exposed to it. It sounds like even as a teenager. Like, how old were you?
18. He had a huge infomercial, that big infomercials. I ordered his CDs, so I got addicted. It was called a 30-day program. It's like a 30-day program, and it was life-changing. I started at 18. And it was actually, the first time I ordered it was cassettes. The second time I ordered it were CDs. And it's the only thing I would listen to in my car. So people were like, I'm not going to drive with you. I'm like, why? Because all you listen to is that Tony Robbins shit. I'm like, yeah, that's okay. Because trust me, this is going to pay off for me. And I didn't go to a live seminar till I think I was the age of 20. But then I went all in. By 21, I went to this 14-day course in Hawaii, and that was when I became a vegetarian and lots of other life changes.
Wow, good for you. I mean, that's pretty amazing. I find myself quite influenced by him now, and it's interesting. People tell me, he says, Tony Robbins is, isn't that kind of like sort of pop psychology stuff? I mean, because they know me. I mean, I have a degree in I went to PhD, coursework in neuroscience, and I've gone really deep on motivational psychology. But I think that Tony Robbins is really underrated as a scholar. I think he knows a lot, and he's just really good at connecting with people and being entertaining. And maybe there's a little bit of professional jealousy that people have of him, but I think he's really underrated. One of the most powerful frameworks that Tony has is called the 6 human needs. And I use it all the time. I use it in my coaching. I use it in my relationships. And I think it really ties to what we're talking about today about the 10X better, because the The two higher order needs around growth and contribution are the two that I really want to focus on in terms of my best half. But why don't I go through all six? So first, the four basic ones. I mean, the one that is, I guess, most easy to understand is the need for certainty. We have a need for predictability. We need safety. We need security. A need that not just we have as humans, but really all animals, need that. But maybe a little more unintuitive is a need for the opposite of that, which is that of uncertainty or surprise. I mean, if we always ate the same food every day, things wouldn't be very interesting. We need new stimuli as well as having, the rock solid certainty. The third, and for all the entrepreneurs out there who probably strongly resonate with this, is significance.
Yes.
We have a need to feel important. This was hugely important for me.
Yeah.
I think for lots of
Me
young
too.
men. Yeah. And for good reason. If you want to have success, especially in the romantic sphere, you better do something of consequence, of significance. So the companies I built, the book that I wrote, music that I write, I mean, a lot of that is to feel more significant and to have external validation on me. And, everyone will need that. I mean, even a monk, I think, has some need for external validation.
Can I jump in on this one?
Sure.
So women have the incredible opportunity to give life. I mean, they make babies. And that's probably, the purpose, probably why we as humans are here. But as men, we're part of that process, but we're not that important to the process. So, I think a man builds companies. I think it's like giving jobs to hundreds of people and creating employment. And I mean, to me, that's my babies. So I think men take great pride in their businesses. Yeah. So, and I think that obviously women can do it as well. But women already have this natural ability to create this little human and watch it grow. And I think as men, we can create these ideas. We can take this idea and turn it into this business. And, in your case, ends up becoming this $1 billion business. And the startups I've been involved with, turn out to be billions of dollars of sales. And it's exciting as hell. So again, I feel like it's men's opportunity to create significance. And that's how I've always looked at it.
Yeah, no, I agree. I like that you attach it a little bit to creating new life, because I think it's really true. And the last one is love and connection, right? We have a need to be loved, to love other people, to feel connected to people. And I think the idea here behind this framework is that if we're missing any of these things in our life, if we're missing it in our job, if we don't have enough variety in our job, we're going to go seek it elsewhere. If we don't have enough significance with our partner, we're going to go and seek it elsewhere. We have a need to fulfill all of these needs, including the two higher order needs, which are growth, right? So one of them is growth, the need for us to expand our horizons, to continue to learn, develop new skills. One for sure that I identify with, and probably the one which I think that I've not done as much of as I need in my life, and that I'm really excited about in terms of my best half, is that around contribution, right? Which is a need to give back, to make the world a better place. And it's not so much like significance is really about getting recognition for it. When you're really doing contribution, you're doing it because it's what you want to do. It's really internally driven to have this kind of impact on the world. And so I think the more I can focus on those higher order ones around growth and contribution, I think it drives more of those positive emotions and happiness that we were talking about.
100%.
I read a quote when I was young. I think I was like 18 years old. And it was a quote from, of all people, Rasputin, who was the Russian, I don't know, worm tongue that slept with the empress and caused all kinds of problems in Russia. But one of the things he said is that any man who's able to employ 20 people is like a god. Is like a genius. And I thought it was such an interesting quote, right? That you could essentially help 20 families put food on the table.
Yes.
Is really quite a miraculous thing.
And it's funny. I know in our last show, we talked a lot about motivation. And I remember, one time where we ran out of money, we raised venture capital, we run out of money, management team leaves. And I'm like, holy shit, but I had 20 families to feed. There was 20 families in that one office that was dependent on me. Like, I didn't need any motivation. That was it.
Yeah.
So I think it's true. I think, and I think that's a goal that people don't want to talk about. They talk about income goals and lifestyle goals, but having 20 people where you're responsible for their families, that's awesome.
Now, do you still feel that way? Because I think what's interesting now is that, you know, I used to love having a lot of employees. It really made me feel good. And maybe it was this quote from Rasputin. Maybe it was the idea that we could, I mean, not just put food on the table, because these days, at least in the West, we don't really need any more food on the table. We have too much food. It was more the ability to develop people. I mean, if there's one thing that I'm really proud of in my career is just the number of people that I've helped develop. When I look at my alumni, both from Eloqua and Intuitive, and see the sheer number of other CEOs and entrepreneurs and vice presidents, and in one case, if you remember Manjula Salvaraja.
Yeah, of course, I do remember.
Who's now a CBC correspondent and one of the best journalists in Canada.
Wow.
You know,
state media, but good for her.
Yeah, so you can't have it all. You know?
It's okay. It's Canada.
But you know, for state media, I think she's pretty.
She's doing a great job. Good for her. Okay. Good.
But you know, that's what I'm really proud of. And think about all the people now that they employ.
Yeah.
I mean, that really makes me. That I'm very proud of that. That said, I'm not that excited for my next chapter to necessarily employ a lot of people. I think I want to have a lot of impact.
Yeah.
I think impact is really great. But I'm excited about some of things you are. I'm very excited about AI.
Yes.
You know, Sam Altman predicted, I think correctly, that in the next, I don't know what, 3 or 4 years, there will be $1 billion company without a single employee.
Yes. Yes.
And to me, that's pretty exciting, and not so much for the, you know, the significance part. I think has gone down for me a lot in return for some of the higher level drivers, which are growth and contribution. So growth is something, I mean, I've always been excited about growing and expanding my boundaries as a person. But one thing that I haven't done very much of in my life, I think, is really give back. I've not really been very involved in philanthropy or charities. Quote from one of my favorite investors, Doug Casey, who's kind of an anarchist guy, very successful investor. But he said, most charities are not worth the cost of the bullet to shoot them in the head. Typical Doug Casey. But, you know, basically a lot of charities are scams, right? They don't actually do a lot of good, whatever.
Right.
You know, that said, I mean, this is something I'm getting a lot more interested in now is find a way to really give back and make a real impact on the world, you know, which I think I've done to some degree through employing a lot of people and helping to grow and develop them.
Right.
But I think as I look at my next chapter and what 10x better means, I think it really means having a bigger impact on the world.
Well, I think we're going to have a much bigger impact with the things we're doing right now, like this podcast, the community we're building. We're going to be able to influence millions of people. So I think it's going to be a legacy. It's funny because when you talked about in my second half, am I excited about employees? The answer is no. Because in my first half, I realized I'm not a very good manager. I would say I'm a terrible manager. And my expectations...
For my memory of you, that would be correct.
Right. So I don't think anyone's going to debate that.
You've got some great skills.
Yeah.
Management is not one of them. You're self-aware enough, though, I think, to surround yourself with great people.
Yeah, management's not one of them. So for me, AI, it's the greatest thing ever. Like literally, I can be... And I do this many days where I do those stuff. I'm using like Copilot, ChatGPT 4+. Like I'm doing all these different things. And I look at the end of the day, I'm like, when I had 20 people in an office, like they couldn't do what I just did. Like it's that powerful. But my proudest moments though, of my first half were with people. And some of our alumni actually got married. You know,
that's right.
You know,
Paul and Tammy.
And it was that was kind of a neat one where I bought a vacation home in Blue Mountain. It's a beautiful house. And I'm in the kitchen checking out the house and I look out the window and I'm like, is that Paul? And I'm like, oh, is that Tammy? So I end up buying a house next to them. And it just, so yeah.
So just for the benefit of the audience, Paul Tashima was one of the greatest executives I worked with, was my head of customer success at Eloqua. Tammy Chason was your, what does she do?
Project manager. She's amazing. She's president of an ad agency now.
So we were early business partners.
Yeah.
And so my guy and your gal got together.
Yeah, and they're extremely happy.
Yeah.
And that was, I remember times with Paul, and I don't know if you even knew some of this stuff, but we did this one trip to Mammoth Mountain and we had this like incredible strategy meeting. And it's one of those moments in my life where I actually came up with an idea that turned out to be a massive idea, but we didn't know at the time. We're driving back, like 6-hour drive through the Sierra Nevada desert. It's freezing cold. And like, we're just exhausted. We couldn't drive anymore. We ended up at this motel and they had one room left. So I'm like, let's share a room. We share a room. What they didn't tell us, there's no heating in the room. Like literally it was freezing. So Paul and I ended up, I think it was like one bed. I think there was just one bed.
Snuggling up together.
We put all of our clothes on. And I remember I was falling asleep like, I don't know if we're going to wake up. We could die in our sleep, but those are startup days. Like, but again, those are like the greatest times. And I remember, when you guys hit some times where you couldn't pay your rent and people are like living at the office, but those are the best memories. But I'll tell you how it did work for me in terms of contribution. My greatest memories are people I've sponsored. So every year I sponsor somebody. And one of them was a Ukrainian guy named Ross. And a good friend of mine said, Roman, do you want to hire this person? I said, I really don't, because we're now using this software called HubSpot. We were like, a HubSpot partner. And if they don't know HubSpot, like we're not going to hire them. He said, I just want you to do this is before Zoom. We had Skype. Can you do a Skype call with Rostislav, was his Ukrainian name? I said, okay. So I start the call. I'm like, hey, Rostislav, you sound great. Your resume is incredible, but I'm not going to hire you because we only use this software called HubSpot. You don't know how to use it. And all the people that we hire, they do 100-hour training just to get HubSpot certified. And he says, if I was to get HubSpot certified, would you hire me? I said, absolutely. But I don't think it's going to happen. 97 hours later, he's messaging me on Skype. Hey, can we get on a call? I said, sure. He's like, I just completed it. I'm like, you completed the 100 hours. It's been 97 hours. And he got 95%. And I'm like, this guy's either great with Photoshop or he's just really smart. But I sponsored him. And he is one of the guys I'm most inspired by. He's now, Mark, I can tell you, he worked for us for a long time, but he has built an incredibly successful company, multi-million-dollar company. His house is looks like something out of Graceland, like Elvis would live in.
Wow.
He's done so well. And I have a lot of people over the years I've been able to hire. And I made it very tough on them. Working for me is not easy, but the ones that survive do incredibly well. I look at my alumni list and it's like, whoa. And because, if you can put up with a boss, it's like a tyrant and really difficult but stretches you to the next, it's amazing what you can do.
Yeah.
So I'm sure it's I'm sure a lot of Elon's employees don't necessarily love the guy, but I'm sure they're doing some incredible things.
Bezos as well. I know
these aren't easy bosses.
Yeah, they're not. I know. I've hired a couple of people out of Amazon, and all of them say it was really the best working years of their life, even though it was brutal.
Brutal.
It was very,
yes.
very, very, very difficult.
Yes.
But yeah, I think that's what we want. We want difficult. We want to be in a foxhole together with amazing people,
right,
solving problems that are worth solving, and where it's arduous, but where the rewards are there.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about the second half. So what's interesting is how messed up the world is today.
Okay.
So today I get a haircut, and the hairstylist was telling me stories about how she has noticed in the past 3 years. So she's giving me her last 3 years of, and I guess it's primarily women, how they're so addicted, not just to their cell phone, but to these games, and literally they can't even get their hairstyle anymore. She's she'd been a hairstylist for 30 years. She's like, they come in, they can't have conversations about it. They're just so addicted to their phones and playing these games. And she's like, these are clients I've had for a decade.
Oh, so these aren't Gen Z people.
No, these are just baby boomers even. And she's telling me how crazy the world is, and this, these obsessions, not just our kids that are addicted to these devices. And then when I think about what it's like with workers today, Mark, it's like next level. It's half the time it's a mental health day. They think showing up on time is 2 hours late. It's you could never ever say anything that could be construed as criticism, because their mom would come to the office the next day. It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
We've created a generation of the weakest humans alive. And this is a problem.
Yeah.
So anyone that has any mojo, any discipline can just own the world right now, because we've created a generation of such weakness, such weak people. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, it's an exciting opportunity. There's a great book, The Coddling of the American Mind. If you've heard it.
Yeah, I have heard about it.
It's a great book, and I really recommend
Okay.
to you, really anyone, to understand this phenomenon. But you're right. I mean, in every crisis, there is an opportunity. And, one of the things I'm excited about, I have two children, 17 and 13, and I'm excited spending more time with them and planning, how they can have an incredible career in this environment where, you're right, if what they say, in the land of the blind, the one-eyed man is king, right?
Right.
So you have a lot of blind people out there.
There's no competition right now.
That are just people who are, you're right, addicted to dopamine hits.
Yes, like Mark, to find someone, even if they worked a 40-hour week right now, they would be a superstar. Like a superstar. I remember my first job, I'd get there at 5 a.m, be there till 9 o'clock at night. Like I was killing myself.
Yeah.
But that was like me being the outlier. Today, if you just did your 40 hours, you are like, what do you mean? You're coming to the office every day. You're not doing a 3-day week. You're already a superstar.
Yeah. There's all these.
It doesn't take much to win here.
There's a number of TikTok shorts about the manager asks somebody to come in at 8:30 instead of 9, but that's not possible because that's her yoga class or whatever.
Right.
I think things have changed. I think not all of that is bad. I mean, if it encourages Gen Z to spend more time building things, and so that they can do things on their own time and whatnot. But that's not a lot.
But that's not what they're doing.
That's not what they're doing.
Yeah. So what I like to do whenever somebody's like, I have no time. Like, can I just take a look at your phone? Can we just look at your screen time? It's like, oh wow, like 4 hours on TikTok and 3 hours on Instagram. Like really, and then like another 2 hours on Netflix. Like, so you spend 8 hours on just absolute nonsense. That's the reality of what people are going through right now. So I think this is anyways, I'm a big fan of AI because I don't think a lot of humans, like here's the reality. In year one, ChatGPT's already reached the level of Einstein's intelligence. That's year one. This thing's a baby. Like what's going to happen in year two?
Yeah, that's interesting. It makes me nervous too. I mean, you've probably seen the Gemini brouhaha, right? Where it's basically racist, right? You ask for a picture of Washington crossing the Delaware, and it's some sub-Saharan African guy.
Yeah.
And also GPT-4 was on the fritz the last couple of days and spewing out all kinds of garbage.
Yeah.
And so, I do worry a little bit. I mean, people always worry about technology because they worry that humans won't be able to do it anymore, and it always seems to work.
Yeah.
But this stuff is only as good as the training sets, and in some cases there's real bias.
There's tremendous bias. I don't know if I know I send you a lot of stuff, but there's a video of a professor in a Canadian university. He says, I just want to read you the job description of this new AI person they're hiring. You must be like transgender or gay or lesbian, like all the. It's like if you're just like a male, no. If you were like white, no. If you weren't like indigenous, no. Like it's very clear that unless you're in like this really, really small fringe group of people, you could not get hired at this university for a very senior AI role. This is just bizarre. This is just bizarre.
It is bonkers. I mean, I do feel like this wokery is on the way down. I don't know about you, but
I pray, but it's everywhere. This mind virus is everywhere.
It is. I do think it's on the way down. I think it's you see it a lot in academia, you see it in government. For a while it was scary because like in 2021, it really felt like we hit peak woke, where a number of, especially big companies, so you have BlackRock and State Street and Vanguard, which like basically own the entire stock market.
Yeah.
And they were pushing down ESG, which is environmental.
They still are. Yeah.
They are, but they're even having to rebrand ESG because there's such a backlash that's building up.
It's crazy.
Even people on the left are starting to really question it. And maybe now that their white sons are not getting into university anymore because of these kind of preferences. But I hope so.
I was listening to the Bill Ackman interview with Lex Friedman, and this whole DEI stuff and how it's infiltrated universities. It's just like, it's next level. And I'll tell you, dropping off Kate to Western, and look, I couldn't be more proud of my daughter getting to like my university. But I can tell you the first thing I noticed in her dorm, you walk in and every poster mark, not some, every poster was like some fringe group. Again, it was like LGBT, this, all these groups. About the events they have, there was not like one just like, hey, come to our sorority or like there wasn't one. Every poster in our entire university, when you walk into the residence, was all these like, again, like I'm talking about like 1% of the population, 2% of the population, all those groups are representative, but none of like the normal ones that I remember at the university were there. This isn't normal. This doesn't make any sense to me, Mark.
Yeah.
So anyways, there's some strange stuff going on.
Yeah, well, I think it's just going to hasten what was inevitable, which is the death of the university.
Right.
So Clayton Christensen is probably one of the best business theoreticians of all time. He wrote Crossing the Chasm.
Yeah, this great.
So he's amazing. He's at Harvard, and he basically said the university is dead by 2030.
Yeah.
He may be a little bit aggressive on that timeline,
yeah,
but the reason why he said so wasn't because of this wokery stuff. It was because university bundles all kinds of things together that probably should be unbundled.
Right.
And in general, there's constantly a trend towards unbundling because the costs of the transaction costs inevitably go down over time. It's easier to connect things together. Yeah. So the university is a collection of a bunch of things. You use it to go, for example, it's a great place to meet people. It's probably, to me, still the number one reason to go to university.
Right.
It's where it's where
Social.
I met my partner.
Right.
And probably the best reason I think to go is that you have highly educated, people typically there. But you've got researchers that are teaching, which doesn't really make a lot of sense. Like, does it really make sense for someone who's like a subspecialized researcher to be teaching like introduction to psychology or biology? Like, it doesn't really make a lot of sense. So you put together a bunch of things, whereas, you could take a lecture for free from like the best physics teachers in the world.
Yes.
Right. Online.
Absolutely.
Right. This is one of those subjects that's very, very difficult to teach properly.
Right.
As opposed to, a tenured research scientist who's not a born teacher.
Yes.
Right. Like, it doesn't make a lot of sense. So you could imagine something different where, we can design a better social experience in university, I think, than university.
Yeah.
If you really thought about it.
Yeah.
You could attach a better educational experience, a better lab experience, a better co-op experience, like work experience. And I think this wokery is just going to doom the universe a lot faster, because anybody who is not of that persuasion, which is arguably at least half of America and maybe a third of Canada, is just going to say, like, why do this? Like, if my son, who's now 13, were to say, Dad, I don't think I'm going to university. I think I'm going to go and learn a trade instead. Yes. And be debt free. And I think I'm going to start a business. Yeah. When I'm 20, I'd be all for that. Yeah. And I think that what you're going to see, today you might have, lawyers that are celebrated. In 10 years,
it's the carpenters, it's the plumbers, and they'll be making $400 an hour.
Because you can't AI those guys.
No, you can't. You can't. So I had that conversation with my son, Carter, and I said, Carter, like, let me just show you how this is going to play out for you in the next 5 or 10 years. But the lawyers that are making the $400 or $500, they're not going to be, because I can literally create legal docs as good as any $400 or $500 attorney. Yeah. And I'm sure some of our attorneys are going to listen to this, but it's true. Yeah. I can do that right now with ChatGPT, but I can't get a carpenter, a plumber, electrician in this city. Even at $150 an hour, you can't get them. No. So, and then all of the trades, like the whole older generation, they're retiring. In 5 years, Mark, we're going to be paying $400 an hour to get somebody to come to unclog our toilets, to add a light switch. That's the reality.
Yeah, it's absolutely right. Like, I have a hobby farm, and I have a well that's like constantly on the fritz. And there's one guy in the whole region, Kitchener-Waterloo, Guelph, who's the well doctor. Yeah. He's 72 years old. And he comes by to fix my well pump. And I asked him, so what's the plan? Right? Do you have an apprentice? He's like, I've tried to hire an apprentice for 10 years. Right. There is no apprentice. Right. So, what happens when you retire? He's like, I don't know. because it's not, if you want to service well, it's like there's all this stuff you have to know. You get all these certifications up. So yeah, I mean, this is a tremendous.
It's a huge opportunity, and I don't think people are talking about this enough. And for those that aren't great with numbers on math, but $400 an hour, that's $800,000 a year. Let's think about that.
Yeah, these guys are going to be multi-millionaires.
And the wealthiest people I know, like in Muskoka, like when I'm in the boat, I like, oh, whose cottage is that? Who's that? It's not celebrities. Like, oh, those are contractors. These are contractors. That guy has the biggest electrical supply company in Muskoka. Oh, that guy has the biggest tool rental business in Muskoka. Like, these guys have the biggest cottages in Muskoka. It's not Kevin O'Leary, okay? Like, I'm telling you, it's incredible. So I encourage like young people, think about these trades, because AI can't take that job.
Yeah.
And all the other jobs, good luck with. But the AI is they're not coming to your house with the truck, with the tools, fixing things or building things. So it's a huge opportunity.
Yeah. So this may be a segue. Let's get back to 10x better.
10x better.
So I think you highlighted something which may be the difference between knowledge and wisdom.
Yes.
Right. So you can go to university and acquire a lot of knowledge, but a wise person may choose a path, like, for example, working with your hands, which you would maybe counterintuitive people, may actually be the route to success in whatever is coming next. But acquired wisdom is one of the things that I think can make life 10x better. And when I think about wisdom, I think a lot, again, I come back to emotions again. The emotional mind is not something that I spend a lot of time thinking about in the first half of my life, where you're right, it was about achievement, but maybe more just survival.
It's survival.
Our businesses were, in some cases at, death's door and whatever.
But let's talk about this, because I don't think people appreciate this stuff. So I was telling somebody recently, my first hosting bill, for N5R, was with, they built this new center. It was now owned by TELUS. Do you recall those days? Do you know what my hosting bill was? My N5R web hosting bill per month. Were you ready for this one?
Yeah.
Glad you're sitting down.
Yeah.
It was $30,000 per month.
Yeah.
And I think we had a 3-year contract we couldn't get out of.
Yeah.
My current hosting, which is about 1,000 times bigger, is like $100 a month. Like, people don't understand like what it took to start a business. If you want to build a website business and you're hosting, $30,000 a month was just my web hosting.
Yeah.
Like, this is it's so easy now. It's so easy now to start a business versus, 10, 20 years ago.
I give a lot of comments on that. Yeah, my first one, we didn't even have, we actually owned servers. So 250 servers that we stuck in Exodus. Yeah, no, it was bananas. And I remember having to get a logo done. And we spent thousands of dollars to get a logo done.
Yes.
At Eloqua. And then 10 years later at Influitive, it was $200 to some guy in Bulgaria.
Yeah.
Who was on 99 designs.
Yeah.
And, and with others.
Yeah. And now I do it for free with AI.
Okay.
With Canva, with a Canva plugin.
Yeah.
And it's unbelievable.
And that is, that's one of the things that's fun about thinking about what business to do is, what other costs go to trend to zero, and how do you take advantage of things that trend to zero? But back on the wisdom thing.
Yes.
I think, again, a lot of time, achievement and just sort of surviving.
Yeah.
Whereas, the emotional brain is really interesting. It is, I saw a background in neuroscience before I went into business. And what's interesting is that humans can't even make a decision on what to eat for breakfast if their emotional brain is messed up.
Wow.
So we think of ourselves, especially the decision-making brain, we think of that as a higher level cortical function, as something that's kind of uniquely human, but it's not true. Of course, all animals have to make decisions too, and they have a much more ancient brain. So if you are not able to manage your own emotions, and if you're not able to help other people manage theirs, if you can't influence their emotions, you really can't achieve very much. You can't really be very successful. So that's one of the things that I'm excited about is achieving more mastery over my emotional state and really harnessing that, harnessing the full power of all the emotional states that I have, but especially how do you work with others and give them the feelings that they want in order to be successful. And so I think that if we're successful there, that will make life 10x better. I think my life will be 10x better because not only will I have more mastery, but I'll help other people get what they want.
Yeah, I think we can help a lot of people, Mark, even with these podcasts. There's so much misinformation. And, as you know, Donald Trump was one of my biggest clients for many years. And, he was the guy that coined this whole like misinformation and fake news stuff. And he was right.
Yeah. Was.
What I didn't realize is how deep it really is. And the challenge is our society has been taught so many things that are absolutely the opposite is true. And that's why people are so unhappy and they're so unhealthy. Suicide is the number 2 cause of death. I mean, this is incredible. In a place where even the average person right now in North America is where the wealthiest people were from a comfort and a lifestyle where they were 100 years ago. Like 100 years ago, like there was no, like in these cities, you think about how they were getting around. Like the life that we lead today is exponentially better. But yet people have never been more miserable. They've never been more unhappy. And so many people are addicted to drugs and alcohol. So I think that our show, because I know we're going to go deep on some of these things, we're going to help a lot of people. I'm excited. I'm excited about the next half.
Yeah, that is interesting. Yeah, no, I have looked at countries that are happy versus ones that are not. So I lived in a country in Singapore that is sort of famously unhappy. Which is surprising. I actually really loved living there. It was great. Like the weather, the food was really fantastic. I think the people and scenery are quite attractive. But yet one of the more unhappy places, which is interesting. And then there are other places. I think the happiest country, I think the happiest is Bhutan. I don't know much about Bhutan, but like I know Finland, for example, is really happy.
Yeah. And Costa Rica is usually in the top 2 or 3.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And that's interesting because those climates are very different in Finland and Costa Rica. But, Finland is a place where they do a lot of sauna and cold plunge. And that's one of the things that we talk about as one of the things that
it's community. What's interesting about that, it's a sense of community. So Costa Rica definitely has the weather. But the people, it's when you study, all of those countries where people live past 100, it's all about community. It's just how they interact with each other. And the countries which are very unhappy, they tend to live alone in these small little tiny places, no real sense of community. So but look, we're going to go deep into some of these things, which I'm excited about.
All right.
But I think today is really talking about why the second half can be the best, because it's really success is about achievement and fulfillment. And if you just get achievement, you're going to be miserable. We know a lot of celebrities and a lot of famous people, and they kill themselves because they didn't reach fulfillment. So there's also, I guess, people that are like Buddhist monks. Maybe they didn't have achievement. They're just like, praying and meditating all day. And that's true. That's great for some people. But a lot of us that have families and we've got to pay bills, we can't just sit and meditate all day. So I think the key to 10X for me, it's really the art of fulfillment plus the entire part of achievement and marrying those two together. That's what success is today for me. But I think you need both.
All right, I buy that.
Good. Well, I'm excited about drilling down to some of these topics. And thank you so much for today. Today was an awesome discussion.
Yeah, that was fun. Go eat a steak.
No, vegetarians don't eat steaks. We don't eat that, Mark. We do not eat that. We'll talk about your iron level later.
Yeah.
Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.